Jim Rupp, how you doing?
Good. Doing great, Sean. Hanging in there. Everybody's safe and healthy, so I can't complain.
Yeah, yeah, really me neither. Um, my son is 7, so that's been really great. Probably the thing I like the least about this whole pandemic is just he's very extroverted. I'm an introvert, so I'm fine. Uh, but he's an extrovert, so he likes to be around his friends and stuff and cousins, and you know he's an only child, so you know I think that hits a little bit different. But at least he's able to go to school. The We have him in a private school, so and they're actually have been actually meeting on site.
Yeah.
We've had a few virtual days, but that's been very positive. Uh, he has that outlet. Another thing I don't like, and of course he's always talking about, when am I going to see Grandpa, you know, and Grandma and all like that. And of course they're up in Michigan, so we haven't done that yet. Ordinarily around his birthday, which is in August, he would have been, we would have went up there and hung out for a while. Sometimes we leave him for a couple days, and my dad's got everything up there, horses and
Ooh.
go-karts and four-wheelers and all kinds of stuff. I grew up on a dirt road. It's still a dirt road, and so it's that kind of thing. So he loves that, and I like him to be able to have that.
That
But I
sounds
don't like
like
the idea
we're,
that
we're out in an area like that. We've got a small little hobby farm up in Morrill County, Ohio, and my neighbors are all Amish, and we've had a couple of workhorses, and we heat with wood. So I'm splitting wood, and the kids, everybody loves to come up and hike in the woods or go squirrel hunting or whatever.
yeah, there's something about that kind of lifestyle that is very peaceful, and I don't know, maybe teaches you that maybe there's more important things than computer screens. And yeah, it's just better. And my wife, of course, she grew up in Toledo and in the city, so she she almost has a, like, I've been trying to, hey, let's move out into the country. Let's look at, I don't know if I want to move out in the country. I don't know if I can handle that. I don't know. I'd be kind of scared at night when, if you have a gig, this kind of thing. And I'm like, but but I grew up that way. So obviously I would be biased in a certain direction.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. My wife was, I'm very blessed. She's an amazing woman. She always wanted to be out there, but she's actually raised in a city, raised in Columbus. And I was raised in Canton, Ohio, but my family was all from the mountains of West Virginia, and we used to go down there for 3 weeks every summer. And I deer hunting in the fall, and grandma's at Christmas, and it's way up in the hills. So I mean, I can remember being down there with 3 and 4 foot of snow and trout fishing in the spring, and yeah, I love that.
yeah, you mentioned snow. I was born in Columbus, and then my dad's job moved us to Michigan, and so I had my 6th birthday in the house my parents still live in, and we actually got real snow.
Yeah.
And then I went to Western Michigan University, and we got even more real snow. To the to the point where the roads immediately surrounding and kind of going through campus were all sort of steam heated. They had a certain expectation for
Yeah.
a certain kind of precipitation. Uh, but we'd have these huge, these
Yeah.
big piles of snow like this, you know,
Yeah.
and they were like, "I don't care, get to class. It doesn't. Hey, what's that?" And So when I moved back to Columbus, because I was born in Columbus, I think I said that when I moved back to Columbus, and I just saw how like uh, I don't know, it's just like they don't make kids the same way anymore or something. Everybody's so concerned about what's going to happen to the kids, you know. I mean, you know, you should be within reason. You know, everybody's wearing helmets now when they're riding their bikes. I didn't do that stuff. But, you know, well, it's going to be too cold outside, so we need to cancel class or, you know, cancel school. And I'm like, put a coat on. Don't stay outside, you know. That's the way I'm thinking about it.
Yeah.
Because, you know, winters where I grew up were quite a bit cooler than they are here.
Well, it's amazing to me. We live, you know, I'm 43 miles, probably about 40 miles north of the outer belt of Columbus. And we're at the edge of the lake effect. So if Columbus is getting an inch or two, we've probably got 6. You know, we
Right.
get the edge of that Lake Erie, Cleveland weather. So, but we like the snow. I like hiking in it. It's fun to be out in it. And we have a little hill right there. The grandkids, I'm grandfather now, 2 grandkids, and they can sled on the hill. And, you know.
So, speaking of snow, it seemed like last year Christmas we got robbed. We didn't get any snow, right?
Yeah.
We didn't have any snow anywhere around Christmas, right?
Yeah.
And my son, he's like, come on, man. You know, we have to have snow for winter. Not snow for winter, snow for Christmas. And then of course this year it was like perfect. It came in like the day before.
Yeah.
It was like perfect. There you go.
Oh yeah.
We have snow.
And you can imagine
And then
us. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
yeah, right.
Well, we have that. It's an Amish home, and it's got a wood cook stove at one end and a little high efficiency wood stove at the other end. And that house is toasty warm. But you'd walk in, and they have like glass window. You know, the fires are going, and the house is warm, and my wife's cooking, you know, hot chocolate, and it's just, yeah, it's beautiful. We love it. You should have you guys up sometime.
Oh yeah, I mean, I'd totally be into that, and I know my son would be overjoyed. He would really have a good time.
Yeah. Yeah, that would be fun.
Yeah.
I get him in a carriage ride from one of my Amish neighbors. He'd love that.
So you know, of course we know each other because we work together at Ohio State. That's the primary way that we interface. We played dozens and dozens of gigs together, both you know with the Columbus Jazz Orchestra and the Ohio Jazz Tet, and you know you have you know a consistently strong studio. I think that would rival you know practically any studio I can think of, any drum studio at a university. I mean, it's always very you know high quality students that are good people and that are really talented. And then of course you have that you know magical touch with your students that seems to work miracles.
Well, I appreciate that, John, especially coming from you. You know, you've got an amazing thing going in your studio. But yeah, I've been very fortunate to have a great crew of kids, and you know, it's fun for me. I may get some things. I get as much from them. They're turning me, hey, Jim, have you seen this? You know, and so we kind of trade tracks back and forth. Matter of fact, Cedric Easton, wonderful drummer in town, we were talking the other day, and he sent me a bunch of tracks to check out. And he said, now you send me some stuff I don't have. So we're starting to go back and forth with drummer tracks. You need to check this guy out, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, I interviewed Cedric on this program actually.
What a jam!
Interesting. Yeah. Oh yeah, he's a fine musician, good people. You know, I mean, I have some musician buddies that all we do is talk about music, but actually most of the really close friends that I have, we don't talk about music as much. We end up talking about all kinds of other stuff, you know, life stuff and maybe politics and religion. And thank you so much
for watching my video so far. If you'd like to support, there are several ways to do so below. Also, likes are free. Please comment, share, and subscribe. Now back to the video.
Philosophy and just cultural stuff. And of course, this whole, it started with the pandemic, and then it moved into these, racial riots in protests, and then it moved from that into, it just seems like we've had a I don't know that anyone could have
predicted all this.
Yeah, predicted this or written a script. I think you could get, 10 of the best Hollywood script writers, and they wouldn't have thought of any of this stuff.
Yeah.
And maybe they wouldn't have thought about it because they would have thought that it wouldn't have been believable. Well,
yeah.
We have to make this film believable, so you got to leave a lot of that stuff out of there. Let's put about 10% of that in there.
But, I've told a couple of my kids this. My parents came from Pickens, West Virginia, which is a beautiful small town way up in the hills. It literally has a road that leads up there for about almost an hour, and if you want to come out, you either go back down almost like a logging road, dirt road, or you come back down. There's no cell signal. My dad graduated with a class of 3. They went through the Great Depression, World War II. My dad said they only had one pair of shoes when they were kids, and you didn't wear them during the week in the summer. But he said, we never knew we were poor. We had plenty to eat. Kids were playing. It was, it wasn't until later they realized it. So even through all this political and mess and the pandemic, I guess I'm the optimist that Americans are resilient and strong, and we've got an amazing country. We're going to come through this, and we'll land on our feet.
Yeah, I mean, it's not our first rodeo, right?
That's right.
So we'll work it out. I hope that what happens is that, my father, he's old enough to have lived through a lot of social unrest, and one thing that we talked about was that there seems to be something somewhat different about what's happening, or at least what was started with the George Floyd stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And it seems that maybe there will be some actual change and some actual movement in a particular direction. At least it seems that in a way people seem to be more open to having the conversation. You can't change someone's heart, and I don't think that you should try to. And frankly, I prefer to know who doesn't like me because of my skin color. I'd rather just know that you're the person that doesn't like me for that reason, so then I know to stay away from you. So I don't know that necessarily controlling the dialogue, trying to, okay, you're not allowed to say this and you're not allowed to say that, and this is racially insensitive like this. I'd rather just, take all the governors off and then just have people sit in a room and just talk to each other. And, amazing things can happen, and you find out that you're not as different as you thought you were, as you thought you were. And what a great vehicle music is to accomplish that very same thing.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, music is it's a uniting force. It's a positive force. And what was Art Blakey's great quote? Music helps you shake off the dust of everyday life. And it's colorblind. It's gender blind. It's just music. I think you're right on. It just unites us no matter what your background or creed or color or religion or, and that's a beautiful thing about it. It's uplifting. It's positive. It's, I walk on stage. I'm smiling.
Yeah. I have to say the thing I've missed the most is just being able to be on stage and playing in front of an audience. Fortunately, I've been able to do some live streamed church services. Actually, that's never stopped. No congregation, a minimal number of folks that are needed to do the service, and live streamed on YouTube at the church that I'm the minister of music at. So that's been fortunate, and I've been doing a once a month live stream with my quartet. So that's been great, but it's I just miss the audience. I mean, it just feels like this really kind of antiseptic, and all of the screens all the time. This first 2 weeks of classes, of course, is all virtual, and that's just that's just a drag. That's not really what this is supposed to be.
Music.
And I'm fortunate, and we're fortunate that we have the technology to still be able to do things. And I hope it doesn't sound like sour grapes, but I just I want to hear the ambient noises in the room. I want to hear how the sound ricochets off the wall. I want to hear the applause of the audience, the sort of the feedback from the audience, the responses that they have to certain sounds that they didn't expect, all of that kind of stuff. That's really missing.
Yeah, I remember the first I can't even remember was I did with the Cleveland Pops. I think it might have been the Pops, but we did a couple with the Jazz Orchestra also, where we were playing in a hall, and we get done with the tune, and even though there's nobody there, it's a streaming gig or something, still at the end of the tune it's like crickets. And it's the weirdest feeling, isn't it? It's like, it's a little chilling almost. But I always say this teaching via Zoom, and there were some positives. There's some positive to that. I think it had some guests come in and do Russ Miller, a good buddy of mine, big studio drummer in LA, took a tour of the studio. John Sunken, alumni, who's doing very well in New York, talked to all my students about stuff. And I think this coming week, Matt Wilson's going to do a thing for my guys. Great drummer, great friend. And so there's some real positive there out of it. It's also trained my guys to maybe upload it. Like if you're doing a transcription project, here's me playing my transcription, upload it. We can all watch it. But as far as regular lessons, you're right. It's like I say, it's like kissing through a screen door. You're missing that connection with your students. You really can't hear their sound like you want. And yeah, there's some positives there, but it's not the same either. I'd like to think going forward, maybe when, we can kind of take the things that really Zoom and the online thing brought to us and incorporate some of those into in-person lessons, like the best of everything.
Yeah. The church I work at, we were not, equipped for online anything. So we kind of started with like some webcams and like a Zoom session, and then that, I think a couple times that even crashed. We were doing like a Facebook Live, like somebody's iPad was like shooting, and then so we went all the way from that to having, a camera switcher and, two really, great cameras that are in the sanctuary built in, and, a separate mix for the, for the house than for the stream. And so, I mean, we went all the way from, zero to hero,
Right.
And so now when we go back to regular services, of course, we're not going to stop streaming.
Yeah.
Right. So, so there's a way to view this positively. There's a way to say, okay, I didn't really want to be doing this, but what are some things that I can learn from this?
Yeah.
How can I take some of this, what I learned, and actually combine it with what I was doing before?
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
So Jim, tell us about how you grew up, and tell us about maybe your earliest experiences with music, and then maybe when you knew that that's what you wanted to do, that you knew that music was going to be a central part of your life, and maybe some mentors and teachers, and maybe early sounds that you heard around the house, music, and all of that.
Well, I grew up in Canton, Ohio, and I remember we lived with my great aunt right in downtown Canton, West Tuscarawas Street, and parade came by, and I thought the drummers, in the parade, I thought, well, that looks cool. And right after that, fourth grade, they said, does anybody want to play an instrument? And I said, I want to, I'll play the drums. And I enjoyed it, and I was playing through, junior high school and everything. But I think it was my sophomore year in high school. I'm in the high school jazz band. I had a wonderful high school band director. This guy was I owe a lot to a guy named Joe Michigan, Glenwood High School. And he took us to Moonlight Ballroom in Canton to hear the Count Basie Orchestra, of which you're an alum. It's quite prestigious, my friend. But I'm sitting at Moonlight Ballroom, literally leaning on the edge of the stage, listening to the band. And all of a sudden, I went from enjoying music and really liking band to being, I want to do that. I want to be on the stage with that band. And all of a sudden, I'm buying, I must have a collection of Basie records, massive. We used to joke when I went to Ohio State. And when I went there, the joke used to be the Basie band was God's chosen band. But I was playing I had a wonderful drum teacher, a guy named Rick Formet. And then my high school band director hooked me up with some alums at the school, a guy named Cal Haynes and Kim Hall, and some really good teachers, Jim, oh God, I'm embarrassed here thinking, but some really great guys. And I came to Ohio State. I actually started Ohio State in pre-vet, but I made was in the band. I was always at the music building. And my parents, again, they came from West Virginia through the Depression. They were like, Jim, you're smart. I was talking about music. You should go into you could be a doctor, a lawyer. But they were always supportive, and I switched. I became a music major. So sometimes when my students were struggling coming into music, I have a really good transfer coming in next year, and another student who changed was a engineering major at OSU, Jake, who's a really good young player. And I understand that dynamic of, being a musician. It's not quite as clean cut a career as maybe being an engineer for Boeing or an accountant or something like that. But, the director of Ohio State at the time, Tom Battenberg, was fabulous. And I had a great drum teacher, Jim Curlis, who I kid, he's still my teacher. We talked through what each of us are doing, and a wonderful teacher. And we got to play with all kinds of guest artists when I was at OSU. And one time Peter Erskine was brought in as a guest and played with the band, and we hung out, kind of became friends. And then Louis Belson was brought in the previous year. And I guess the two of them, I met Louis at the Notre Dame Jazz Festival because Louis was a judge. I won an award and shook hands with Louis. And, Louis was one of the famous gentlemen, gracious guy the whole time. And he and Peter Erskine were in Los Angeles, I think, having lunch. And Peter had told Louis, hey, I think Maynard is looking for a new drummer. And Louis said, well, I heard this guy at Ohio State's jazz ensemble at the Notre Dame Jazz Festival. And Peter said, oh, yeah, I remember him. He was, so I got a recommendation. I was student teaching at Dublin High School, and Maynard's management had called up to the high school to try and track me down. I can still see Trent Holtzberry, who was the director there at that time, called me over to junior high school. I was a music ed major, so I'm student teaching. He's like, Jim, you're not going to believe this. Maynard Ferguson's manager's called here. They want you to call him, and they want a tape. And I feel like one of the most blessed, lucky guys in the world. I graduated from OSU, and 10 days later, I'm on the road with Maynard. And he was a sweetheart, great bunch of guys, a real education. And I was the kid. You talk about a green, snot-nosed kid out on the road, scared shitless. I was. As a matter of fact, I remember my first night. This is a great little story. My first night on the band, we'd had a rehearsal the day before, an afternoon rehearsal. And all I knew was we're playing and flying to the East Coast. We're playing at Wolf Trap. Well, I don't know what Wolf Trap is. What's Wolf Trap? Well, it's this big outdoor venue. It's a jazz festival. And the bus is pulling up, and all of a sudden I look out, and here's this massive outdoor pavilion, and I think there was like 12,000 people, and it was packed, outdoor lawn seating. And I'm already nervous as can be, and I'm backstage, and the road manager and stage manager, hey, Jim, you want to come look at your drums? Because as soon as Buddy's done, we're going to pull his kit off on a riser and pull yours on. And I'm thinking, okay, it's my first night on Maynard Ferguson's band. It's a jazz festival with 10,000 people, and I've got to follow Buddy Rich's band and follow Buddy. And I'm sitting backstage in the curtains looking at Buddy, and I actually met Buddy in high school, and he was very nice to me. And Maynard came over and put his arm on my shoulder and said, hey, kid, you sounded great in rehearsal, Jim. Let's go have some fun. And it just relaxed me. And it was a great experience. And then, as you know, I did Woody's band on and off for years. I still do some dates with the band when they go out. But I got to tell you, a great story goes back to the beginning is I did about, I'm going to say 9 years with jazz singer Diane Shure. Wonderful lady. I mean, we had so much fun, great gig. And one night I'm looking at the schedule, we're out, and we've got 2 nights in New York with the Basie Band and a night with the Ellington Band. And I walked on that stage with the Basie Band thinking, oh my God, the guy, my heroes, from Papa Joe to Shannon Wilson, certainly Sonny Payne, Harold Jones. Harold's a dear friend of mine now. What a sweetheart he is. And, Butch Miles, all these great players. Dennis McCrell and I are great friends. I got to play a couple nights with that band. That first night walking on the stage, it was like, ooh, goosebumps up and down my spine. I can still feel it, because that's what got me really excited about playing music. So there's, I guess, the nutshell story. How's that?
No, that's great, man. And I know you're not lacking in the stories department. You always have a story, and it's always just the right story. Like, it has just the right nuance for what it is.
That's my vintage.
Yeah. That's great.
It's like one day, John Riley's a great friend of mine. We both played on Woody's band, and I'm talking to John on the phone, and we get on to who was the first guy to play, not the ride pattern, but to play it on a ride sim. And this was, I don't know, a few months ago. I said, well, John, with Roy Haynes, I mean, he obviously played with Louis Armstrong, he's legendary. And he said, well, I don't know how get a hold of Roy. I said, well, it's got to be one of the older players that would be able to help us out on that, John. And there's this pause, and John says back, said, Jim, you and I are the older players.
Now, I'm not quite as old as you are, but I recognize that happening to myself, because I was always the youngest, guy on the stage, and then I became, one of about the same age, and then now I'm consistently the oldest or almost the oldest, and that continues. That has continued. That's just how it works. But if you've been able to stick around for long enough and keep working, that's the blessing, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And playing with older, more mature players. I mean, I don't mean to neglect this, but I always say my grad school was playing here in Columbus with Hank Marr and Rusty Bryant. Oh my golly, those guys were so wonderful to me, and I owe so much to them. We used to all of us, in the jazz department there was a great club in town called the Anchor Inn, and we used to go over there and hear those guys. And think about it, at one point, this club right there on Morse Road, upstairs was Bobby Pierce and Gary Carney, world-class trombonist, with either Mary McClendon or Deborah Rothrock. And downstairs, I was down there with Rusty Bryant, Hank Morris, and Jeanette Williams. 2 organ gigs in the same room, and we traded sets. And playing with those guys, man, they had such a deep pocket, and it was a real education playing with those guys. That's the real world. And we were playing 3 or 4 nights a week, every week. Unfortunately, those days are kind of gone to a large degree.
Yeah, it's right, and I don't want to sound so dark, but as much as gigs have sort of dried up even before the pandemic, you kind of wonder what it's going to be like. I mean, obviously we know what's happening during the pandemic,
right?
A big zero, but but after the pandemic, so many of these clubs have had to shut down. What was it, the Jazz Standard that shut down?
Yeah, I think so.
Really?
And I think Birdland's real close. And there's a side of me, though, that again, maybe it's the optimist that likes to feel that, hopefully late spring, summer, things come back to normal. People are going to be so pent up and cabin fevered that they're going to want to get out and hear some music and go enjoy some life, and maybe things blossom bigger than before. That's my attitude, and I'm sticking to it, right?
I'm gonna say this, and don't feel like you have to agree with me. But okay, so obviously you have to do things that protect people as much as possible.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so this virus is out here. We don't really know that much about it. I'm talking about at the beginning of it. We know more about it now, but
right. We're constantly learning. It's like, right.
Yeah, but you didn't know that much about it, But then when you start to see the statistics, and I know statistics can be kind of like cold numbers that seem to be removed from the sort of human, element. Each one of those numbers represents a person. So
yeah.
I don't want to sound or come across as insensitive or anything like that. But we know that certain populations that are particularly susceptible, elderly people, people that have underlying health condition. Some folks didn't know that they had an underlying health condition, and then this thing was pretty bad for them. But young folks don't seem to be as affected by it, and you have this wide range of symptoms, right? You have anywhere from hospitalized and ventilator to no symptoms at all.
Yeah.
Right? But the person with no symptoms can spread it to other folks. So it seems to me that the thing that is maybe the most different about this is how contagious it is. Because if you look at the actual numbers that we have, what is it? 99.99 or something percent of people recover from this. And part of me, it's hard for me to not think that maybe we didn't do this thing the right way, and maybe the huge damage to the economy didn't have to be as severe. And by the way, when you say economy is also people.
Yeah, sure.
Right? So it's not like the economy is just a pile of money. No, the economy is people.
And it's their lives.
That's right. And as you tank the unemployment rate, as it keeps going up, rather,
mm-hmm.
For each, what is it, 1% or something, that's, what is it, equivalent to like 10,000 deaths. And that doesn't include stuff like suicide, and all kinds of things. So, and I guess it's, hindsight is 2020, and anybody can look at this and be like, hey, well, I would have made better decisions, And so I'm not trying to be that person, but just to see how this has affected, especially musicians, it's just heart wrenching. It's not. I mean, we were already barely holding on, So this is just. It's just a gut punch, man.
Yeah, some of my guys, the teacher at the drum shop, they play some gigs. Maybe they've got a church gig, and they, teach at the shop and stuff. And all of a sudden, oh man, the rug gets pulled out. Now, like you said, your church, some of those church gigs have come back to streaming. The gigs in the clubs and the tours. Even though the big time stars who tour with the mega acts and stuff, of course that's not what it once was anyway, but that's all gone. It's a fine line, and I remember when this all was starting to really implode there in the spring, whatever. I'm sitting there thinking, boy, I wouldn't like to be the people having to make these decisions, because you're right, they don't know a lot. And they're destroying people's lives and the economy in a lot of cases. But on the other hand, you've got people's lives. They're get this, and it is serious. So I'm kind of in the middle. I always feel like, okay, I'm gonna not be stupid, and I'm gonna wear a mask. If nothing else, it can't hurt.
Right.
But do I think wearing, like I see people wearing a mask when they're out. I mean, again, I don't mean to be critical, but I see people out walking the sidewalk, nobody's around, they've got a mask on. I'm like,
my favorite one is driving the car with nobody else in the car with a mask on.
I've seen
that's my favorite. I look over and I see somebody that still has. I'm like, do you not understand what the purpose of the mask is?
Yeah.
Is it all just sort of trying to make sure that everyone knows that you're doing the right things? See, I have my mask on.
Yeah.
I'm sure sometimes people just forget that they have their mask on, and they've gotten so used to this. One thing I meant to say earlier when we were talking about one of the things that I don't like about this whole thing, as far as the way that it affects my son, is that he's aware of the mask. He's looking and seeing people do things, and regular activities that we did last year, like football. Like, he's looking at a football game. He's like, how come no one on the sideline has a mask on? How come, such and such doesn't have a mask on? Or I remember, I always have a mask in my pocket. So we get out of the car to go to the grocery store. I bring him with me most of the time. I try to give my wife a break. And plus, he just wants to go with me all the time.
Sure. So want to hang with Dad.
There's nothing wrong with that. That's right. So we get out the car, and I make sure he just has his mask on. So we're outside. He has it on because I just don't want to be thinking about that. I'm just trying to keep stuff straight, right?
Sure.
So then we go up into the, up to, like, we went to Walmart. And I still have my mask in my pocket or in my hand or something until we get up to the door, and then I put it on. And, I get about halfway up there. He says, "Daddy, you have a mask? Where's your mask?" I just don't like I don't like him thinking about that. Like, that's not what you're supposed to be thinking about. You're not supposed to be thinking about a mask. And then he's able to go to school, which is a positive, but they got to have a mask on all day. And it's like, is a kid supposed to be wearing a mask? Like a 7-year-old is supposed to be going to school wearing a mask? I mean, not I don't know that. So
Does he have
some
to
of that
wear
stuff is.
it? Yeah. Does he have to wear it out on the playground if they go out for recess?
Let me see here. I think when they go out, yeah. So when they go outside, I think they get a break. So I think they don't have to wear it. No, okay. So when they go to the cafeteria. Obviously, they're eating,
Right.
so they get a break there, and then I think they do get a break when they go outside, and play. But then they have to, put the mask back on, and they do hand sanitizer, wash your hands, and all that kind of stuff. They're frequently doing that. They're actually doing a really good job at that school. There's only been a couple times where someone popped positive. It was never any of the kids. It was like one of the teachers or a couple of the teachers or something.
Yeah.
And we either had to do virtual for a couple days, or they just basically got a sub, and kind of changed the way that stuff happened. But they're doing a really, really good job. It's a Catholic school. And
Yeah. I just think just don't be stupid, be courteous to others. But I think we're probably similar. There's some people that are totally uptight about that. And there are other people that don't care where they are, what they're going to do. I'm not going to wear a mask and, whatever.
Yeah. Like it's some sort of political statement.
Yes.
It's either a political statement to wear the mask and to, and to be pointing at other people like, hey, where's your mask? 6 feet, that kind of thing. And then there's the other side of it is like, hey, you're infringing on my rights. You can't tell me to wear a mask. You can't X, Y, and Z.
Yeah.
There's a convenience store down the street from my house. And I go there all the time. Cause it's like, it's a UDF. And they got,
they got good ice cream, don't they?
Sweet.
Good shakes.
Oh my goodness. Oh yeah. Well, I don't actually usually get the. I've done that before, gotten a shake or gotten a cone, or something. But usually, that homemade ice cream, man.
Yeah.
The brand homemade.
Yeah.
It's hard to beat it. So I'm there much more often than I probably should be picking up. Sometimes I'm just picking up milk, right? But often I'm also picking up ice cream. Oh, so anyhow, so I'm there all the time, and they have the signs on the doors. No mask, no service. You can't enter without a mask. We won't serve you without a mask. Like this, I have to say about at least half of the time there's somebody in there without a mask on, and they're still checking the cat out.
Yeah.
So,
well, I think they have to. They probably feel they have to have the signs. And it, again, it protects people, and for the most part, and yeah.
Well, I'm okay with them having the signs, but if you're going to have the sign, then shouldn't you enforce what the sign says? So if you're saying, I remember this was early on in the pandemic. This might have been maybe April or something, April, May, and I was at a Lowe's, right? And they had stuff marked out, and they had their plexiglass up, and they said that they were going to, please be patient because between customers we're going to sanitize the area, right? They weren't doing that. I was like 3 people back. They didn't do it for anybody, right? So I'm just saying, if you're saying you're doing something, then do it. I'm not judging you either way. I'm just judging you by what it is that you're saying. And it's pretty clear to me if you're actually doing that or not.
Yeah.
Now one thing I think is funny, and my wife she'll just tell you step back. But there's this thing where I think in general people don't have a good sense of respecting other people's personal space.
Yeah, some people
and
don't.
This is they're like right up next to you and stuff. And I think it's always been like this, right? But I think now that what's going on is, and people are being a little more sensitive, there's still some folks that just can't help themselves. they're still like right up. You can feel them breathing on the back of your neck and stuff. I was like, come on, man. Aren't you supposed to be? Do you see the stickers on the ground?
Right.
I,
The X's
so
in
I'm
the
an
duct
introvert.
tape.
Yeah, I'm an introvert, and I don't necessarily need people like right up on me. I'm a little claustrophobic, right? So I like people to have a little bit of a distance. I like a
Yeah.
little personal space. So I can't say that I have that I have that I'm totally against the being more conscious of other people's personal space. That may be an okay thing, but it's a drag.
Yeah.
It's a drag, but hopefully it's just going to be a temporary drag,
Yeah.
and we'll
And
get
we
back
deal
to
with it. And like I said, we're probably on the same page. I got to ask you, it's funny, Sean. I'm sitting here thinking, what was your first night on the Basie band like? Obviously, you're, much more experienced and mature player than I was going on Maynard's band, but that must have been a treat walking on that bandstand.
Oh yeah, and one of our colleagues is thoroughly and totally responsible for that, for the referral that got me that gig.
Bobby?
And that's no Byron Stripling.
Ah, yeah.
Yeah, Scotty called Byron and said, "Hey, I need a saxophone player because we're going to be at the what is the supper club up in Cleveland? Um,
Cleveland. I'm up there a fair amount.
the, I'll think of it as
I know what you mean. Nighttown.
Nighttown. Yes.
Yes.
So I need a saxophone player. We're going to be Nighttown, and so he gave him my name, and I showed up for for the gig, and that gig is it's a lot of history, a lot of great charts. The vibe is killing. The nobody swings as hard. Nobody plays the blues like that band. I mean, it's like a dream come true. Even
Sure.
listening to that band, let alone playing in the band. And I play alto too in there. All of the everybody was super warm and generous. There's a bunch of stuff that is not written correctly.
Oh, it's like Woody Herman's band. Very much the same way.
And so they were pointing stuff out. They're like, "Hey, watch out for this. We don't actually play it that way. We play it this other way."
Yeah.
And because of my experience playing with the band, when the jazz ensemble, when we did, our Basie concerts this past semester, there were some nuances, some things that I changed about the way that the charts were written.
Mm-hmm.
Just little subtle things, like something being on the beat versus being on the and, something being laid back until it obscures where the beat is, and then it snaps back into time, that kind of stuff. But they were very warm, very, very helpful. Actually, during our sound check, ran through a couple of the more kind of meat grinder soli sections. Really technical, really fast, and then
I'm sure you tore that gig up, Sean. I know you read fly specs, and they turn you loose on a solo. Look out.
Yeah, it was great, and they featured me on some solos. That concert was a two set concert.
Mm-hmm.
They had the first crowd eats, and then they had the break, and then they bring in the next crowd, and played slightly different set. I record everything, so I have a recording of it, and it was great.
Who was on drums?
That was great.
Who was on drums?
Let's see here. Who was playing drums? Oh, it's been the same drummer. Why can't I think of my man's name right now? Robert. Robert. Why can't I think of his last name right now? Man, I'm gonna have to find that. Robert Boone. Robert Boone.
I've heard good things. Yeah.
Oh, he's killing. He's killing. That rhythm section is all kind of great.
I remember one time, a great bassist. I don't know if you know Lynn Seaton, just a fabulous bass player. And he was playing with Von Olen, John Von Olen, who's a big hero of mine, and Jeff Hamilton. A bunch of us played in Cincinnati. Legendary player, played on Kenton's band and Woody's band, and just what a style, and I mean everything. But Lynn and I played because I'd sub for John, drive to Cincinnati, sub with the Blue Wisp Big Band, and Lynn was this incredible bass player, and I got him on Woody's band. And we did a couple records together on the band and anything, and then eventually he went on the Basie band also, as guys often do, at that era when the road bands were still out. Yeah, a lot of times guys would do it, some time on one band, and after a few years might switch bands. And we were on a festival one time, and Lynn had been on the Basie band. He said one day I'm going to guess this was probably 85, 86. And we got to talking about the feel of the band. Dennis McCrell was on drums on the band. And he said they did a little math one day, and the average guy had been on the Basie band just over 17 years at that point. Can you imagine the time feel and the ensemble when you have guys playing together? The road bands in that day, like Woody's band, we were out off a few weeks in the summer, a few weeks of Christmas. Other than that, you're on the road. Basie band was the same way. All those bands were. So you're playing with these guys every night. You're riding the bus with these guys, you dinner, there's a thing that develops from that. And 17 and a half years, the average guy, oh my golly, the time.
Yep. Yeah. I have to say I felt right at home. It just, you listen to that music, and I mean, what is not to like? I mean,
what's not to like?
Yeah. It's just, it's like, it's killing. I'll tell you, that was a great experience, but getting the next call, that was when I was like, okay, that's when I was like, okay, this. Yeah. And I think the second call I got was for a tour. So the story that goes with that is, it was up in Canada, and with the new laws past past 9/11, and you have to have a passport to do everything,
right?
And so, and I have two passports. I've got a card, and then I've got the actual booklet,
right?
And so the card, you can't fly with the card. You can only fly with the booklet, but you can drive across with the card, right? And but anyhow, what happened was, because I played in the Cab Calloway band, or played in that band, and I did some tours with them, and I got called to do a tour overseas or something, and I didn't have a passport, or my passport had expired. And I said, well, my passport expired, but, if you can help me to expedite this passport, then I can do the gig. And so we went through all this stuff to get the passport, rushed the passport, and then something funky happened with the gig, and the gig got canceled. So I just ended up with the passport, basically with the free passport out of the deal. And that actually is why I was able to do the gig with Basie, was because I had the passport.
All right.
Because there wasn't enough time between when they called me for the gig and for me to get a passport. So, sometimes that stuff just, things happen the way they happen, and you look back and it's like, oh, you know what? If I didn't have that, I wouldn't have been able to do that,
Yep. Opportunity knocks. You have to be ready. But, it gets me thinking. I've told some of my students this. By the time I graduated from high school in 74 and Ohio State in 79. And by the time I graduated from Ohio State, I think I'd seen the Basie band probably 5 times. Woody's band probably 5 times. The Kenton band probably 4 times. Maynard's band probably 6 times. Buddy, I probably saw Buddy 4 or 5 times. I never got to see the Ellington band when Duke was alive. Of course, Duke died, I think, when I was freshman at Ohio State, something like that. But the band was still out some. But that was an era when all those road bands, and especially in Ohio, as I found out later when I first got on, Maynard's band or Woody's band, they would book a lot of times a date in New York, like a high paying gig on a weekend or something. Then they'd have something else in Chicago. So they'd call up colleges and high schools here in the Midwest and say, hey, we've got an off night on a Wednesday, and they would work it just to cover expenses. So most of the time when I saw those bands, it was a weeknight, because it was an off night and, some high school or college could bring them in. But what a great experience, to see all those bands and have a chance to do it. And I still think, the music is so diverse, what we have to do as musicians and what you have to train your students to do. Styles, that's huge, especially for a drummer. Oh my golly, you've got to have all these stylistic things at your fingertips. I heard Steve Houghton, my good friend who just retired from Indiana, heard him do a clinic one time, and he said, you want to get this printout that says, you see a piece of music and it says bassy, and you know what that means, or you see ECM and you know what that means, or you see, loose Elven feel, you know what that means, or it's a tower power groove. What does that mean? And there's something about learning the fundamentals of playing figures and time and taking charge that I still think is valid in a big band, no matter where your musical goals are. I think it's, sometimes in the studio, we'll work on a chart or a piece of music, and it's a straight ahead thing. And I say, okay, well, you can't use the play along now, but let's play through this same chart, except now it's a funk groove. All you do is straighten the eighth note. You're still setting up figures. You're still shaping the tune. The same principles apply. It's almost like it's a good groundwork for it's a jumping off point. Some fundamentals get together. It's great training, I still believe.
Yeah, I always, when I think about jazz studies, jazz is not just about, trying to sound like, late 40s, early 50s bebop or something.
Right.
It's not just about trying to become the next Charlie Parker or the next Jeff Watts or something. It's not just that, right? It is. It's also about developing this sort of fundamental, this skill set that is highly malleable to accommodate pretty much any commercial music. Anything that is, anything from jazz to anything commercial. And it makes it a very valuable experience for a student to have that intense jazz, studies experience. And one thing I'm blessed by, all of our students are certainly blessed by, is, and I think this is really a legacy of Dr. McDaniel, my predecessor, is he really stacked the faculty.
Oh, it's a great crew. Yeah, it's a great crew.
It is an incredibly talented, experienced, conscientious, great teaching. It's just it's a great place. It's a great place. I remember when I took the job here in 2004, and my first thought was, man, these guys can really play, and the music that I write and arrange tends to be pretty challenging and intricate stuff, and I was like, man, these guys will be able to play all this music, and it just inspired me to keep writing, to to rearrange certain things that I had already written. And that was just on the playing side. And then when I saw the level of, teaching and just the, kind of students that were being cranked out, you know, I knew it was the kind of place that I wanted to be.
And the vibe among all this, I love these guys, everybody's all buddies. I mean, we play on gigs and there's no turf battles and everybody has the same goals to help our students reach their goals. I remember talking to, who was it one time, and one of the directors at school, I said, first thing I ask my students is, where do you want to go in music? How are you going to get there? And are you willing to do what's going to take to get you there? And then my job is to show you the opportunities in music, show you what's going to take to get there, and help inspire and motivate you to do what it's going to take to get you there. And I think everybody feels that way. It's all working musicians who are great people and very talented. And I'm like you, I feel very blessed to be there. And this new building is going to be real excited. I love this. I just, as we kind of emailed, there's like a pod of a jazz studies, but a rehearsal space and the faculty office right there. It's going to create a synergy that just promises to be, even hipper than it is now, I think, because everybody's going to come out in the hallway and banter and hang, my drum set practice rooms have small PAs in them, so my guys get used to playing the tracks, part of it, so it's not always everything with a headphone. Can you play without, headphones tend to make everything want to be loud. You don't realize how loud you are. But by the same token, I see my guys, before the pandemic, guys that bring in, their iPod or say, hey man, listen to this. Here's this new track of Brian Blade or so-and-so, it's a community of listening, that hopefully that breeds that even more so.
Yeah, something that I'm a big fan of is these interdisciplinary projects. Now, I'm going to poke a little fun at that term because we are at a university, and you know what a university is supposed to represent, what the word even means, unity in diversity, right? So why do we need a term like interdisciplinary? Unless we're not fulfilling the mission of a university, right? Mm-hmm. So, now that I poked fun at that, I'm a real fan of those kinds of projects because, well, first of all, my wife is a dancer and a choreographer.
That's right.
I work with her. Yeah, I work with her quite a bit on editing and creating music and bringing in live musicians for her productions. And I'm introverted. She's extroverted. And she knows how to convince people to do things in the way that she would like them done. She's very good at that. Yeah. And I let her have that. And so we've done dozens of productions together, and she's done hundreds of them. She's collaborated with something like 100 churches in Central Ohio, and done productions for Lifeline of Ohio. And she used to have this production called Hallelujah, which was a sort of it was a live band with a choir that was comprised of singers from several different churches, and then it was basically a sort of a dance concert to gospel, mm-hmm. sacred music. And then she has her own dance company. So what I like to see is the kinds of possibilities. Well, I think that this new building is going to open up possibilities to collaborate more easily with theater and with dance, of course, because since we're going to sort of all be in the same connected building. And There are other schools that, that do that. Where I got my doctorate from, CCM is constructed that way, and it really does. It facilitates more of those opportunities, because you're just kind of walking around, and I remember, when I was going to school there, I'd be walking down the hall, and then this is like this corridor down here. This is all dancers. I'm walking past dancers as I'm going, to music class. So just having folks that are doing different things in the same building, I think is a positive thing. Now, I don't think that that's a magic. It's not a magic pill, though. So I think it's going to still take us being quite assertive about making sure that we, create opportunities. One such possibility, although it wasn't necessarily cross discipline in that sense, it was cross-discipline with respect to jazz and classical collaboration, was that Charlie Parker with Strings concert that we did.
Oh, that was spectacular. What a great, yeah. That was a ball.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun. You guys sounded great on that. And I had like the, like the greatest rhythm section in the world or something, that for that whole concert, that made it very easy to for everything else to really sync up well. And David Becker did a masterful, fine job. He was very flexible.
The vibe was great. The vibe was beautiful. Yeah, it was so much fun. Yeah, that was brilliant, Sean. Great idea. Came off wonderfully, and cool having different horn players on. That was a great idea.
Yeah, but I think that this is the kind of thing that can open up the building, can open up opportunities like that, but add a few more elements, add a couple more elements. Imagine that concert with dance and with some coordinated lighting or something. I mean, it's just,
yeah,
it can go all over the place. So I'm pretty excited about that. I tend to be somewhat of a pack rat nester kind of thing, and I don't enjoy moving. I hate moving.
My studio, I'm afraid I'm guilty of that also.
I really don't like moving, but this will be a good move.
Yeah,
if that exists.
When are we supposed to move in? Do you actually have a date when we can move in yet? A feel for that?
Yeah, it's going to be what is it? 22. So 2022. What is it? The
spring of that year, maybe.
Yeah, I think it's spring. Like I think what they're going to do is basically move in over the summer. So basically, once that spring semester's over, then they'll get everything together. It gives them a little more time. But yeah, man, it's been great talking to you. Ohio State is fortunate to have you. I'm fortunate to, and I'm fortunate to have you as a colleague and as a friend. And I appreciate, what you're doing in your studio, to make the school great, make, the jazz area really run. So.
Well, believe me, it's an honor to be asked. You've had some, illustrious guys on here, so I feel honored to be asked. Thank you for having me. Thank you for all you do for, university, and thanks for all the great music. We have a lot of fun. You challenge me sometimes, Sean. It's great though. I love that. It's a lot of fun, my friend.
Well, there's more to come. This thing ain't gonna last for long, and we have a jazz festival to start rehearsing again to get ready for. So I'm really excited about that. It's been too long since we've been able to rehearse. So
yeah,
that's gonna be fun.
That'll be great.
All right,
all right,
man. Well, God bless you, and God bless your family.
Thank you. My best to yours. All the best.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Likewise, man.
Yeah.
See ya.
See you.